Look, to go and do that.
You can spin this all the way you want. The President of the United States is not going to, he didn't make a promise to go and invade boardrooms and tell companies, private companies, how much they should pay their employees.
One thing he did do was say that he was going to make life more affordable. And as we pointed out, most Americans say that they don't think that that's where it's headed. He said he would bring prices down. We all knew that that wasn't going to happen because that's not really how prices work. Inequality continues to go up. He talked about bringing down government spending.
In today's video, Abby Phillip shreds Tim Parrish on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as tensions erupt over equal pay, CEO salaries, and the growing gap between rich and working Americans. Tim Parrish defends the system, but Abby Phillip fires back during the heated CNN debate over wage inequality and rising living costs. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Tim Parrish on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
The pay of America's CEOs rose 20 times faster than workers in 2025. And while the average global CEO pocketed $8.4 million in pay and bonuses last year, it would take the average global worker 490 years to earn the same amount. Adjusted for inflation, global worker pay fell 12%, while real CEO pay surged 54% between 2019 and 2025. But as CEOs use their increasingly growing power to undermine workers' rights, one of them is defending that $9 latte that you had the other day.
What we're seeing is people, they want to have a special experience. And regardless of what your income level is, in some cases, a $9 experience does feel like you're splurging. And then what that means is we have to make it worthwhile, right? And then in other cases, people believe, well, this is a really affordable premium experience because they're saying well, it's less than $10.
I feel like to fully appreciate what he just said, you might also want to know that the CEO of Starbucks was given a private jet to commute to his office from his home in California. He is going 1,000 miles away, presumptively as often as he wants, and he's got a big old corporate jet in order to do that. And he's asking you to pay for a very special experience in a $9 cup of coffee.
Well, that video was not a premium experience. I'll start there. That was really cringeworthy. I am curious to know, I don't go to Starbucks often, but I'm curious to know if the premium experience is the barista writing your name incorrectly on the cup. Is it the people that squat there all day long and turn it into their home and office? Is it the really bad coffee? I don't know. I'm very curious about it. But to those who are complaining, every time I walk by Starbucks, every time I drive by Starbucks, there is a line as long as the eye can see. People still go. They want their fix. They're willing to pay. So we can't complain unless we use our power as consumers and say, you know what? I can make a cheaper, better cup of coffee at home, and I'm going to do that. But people want to pay for convenience.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean, I guess the thing is, fine. I guess if you have a business model that says $9 for coffee, which they do, is fine. Then the other side of that, so what are you doing for your workers? I think the part that Americans don't like is where they feel, gypped on the other end, on the salary end, on the benefits end, on the ability to sort of provide for their families, that part.
Abby, I'll take a different approach to that because I believe that we live in the greatest country on the face of the planet, and there's unlimited opportunity here for anybody who's willing to work hard and go after it. If you're upset about this and how much your CEO makes, go launch your own Starbucks. Go launch your own company. Go
not that easy.
Competition. Of course, it's not that easy, but it's never that easy to start a company or something. So anyone in this country, like I said, who's willing to work hard and apply themselves, go become Starbucks competition and sell $7 premium experiences and undercut your competition.
This really showed why so many Americans feel disconnected from today's economy. For years, worker productivity has continued to rise, but average wages have barely kept pace with inflation, while CEO compensation has skyrocketed. According to the Economic Policy Institute, CEO pay has increased dramatically since the late 1970s, while worker earnings have grown only modestly. That imbalance is a major reason people feel the system rewards those already at the top. The idea that workers should simply start their own business also ignores the reality many families face today. Housing prices, healthcare costs, childcare, and student debt have made taking financial risks far harder than it was decades ago. Federal Reserve data consistently shows that many Americans cannot cover even a small emergency expense, making entrepreneurship unrealistic for millions living paycheck to paycheck. There's also growing frustration over executive lifestyles during economic strain, when CEOs receive private jets, large bonuses, and luxury perks, while employees struggle for stable schedules or modest wage increases. It reinforces the perception that corporations are disconnected from everyday workers. Starbucks itself has faced multiple unionization efforts and labor disputes across the country, reflecting real tension between management and staff. Most people are not upset because businesses succeed or because companies make profits. They are frustrated because economic gains increasingly feel concentrated among executives and shareholders, while workers continue dealing with rising prices and financial pressure. Economists also warn that extreme inequality can weaken long-term growth by reducing consumer spending power and social mobility. That is why debates like this resonate so strongly with viewers today.
I don't think that I wouldn't complain. I would just say if I don't like it, I'll go start my own thing.
Go ahead. Can I ask you a question?
I'd prefer if Abby asked the questions, but sure, you can ask the question.
I mean,
It's okay. We can talk to each other here.
do you think that it's insane to say that Starbucks should raise their wages for their workers? Is that insane to say as a concept?
I think that I believe in free markets, and if a private company sets their wages what they are, then that's what they are. And if you don't like the wage,
Do you support the minimum wage?
If you don't like the wage, don't go work there.
You support
I've
the minimum
applied for
wage?
hundreds of jobs where they didn't meet my minimum I wanted to make, and I didn't go work there. And it was as simple as that.
You also don't have the affordability, or you have the affordability most likely to say no to some things.
Sure.
Some people have to take jobs that don't pay the living wage to keep up with rising inflation. And they are in these positions. And I think to Abby's point, what you're seeing is workers at these companies are just not getting paid for what they should be. And then you see these CEOs getting these extravagant, enormous bonuses. And that is the choice of the company.
Right, it's
but
the
I
choice
think
of
there
the company.
has to be some type of conversation that we have of
Yeah.
raising the federal minimum wage and seeing and giving workers more benefits
I appreciate
so that they
that.
can be competitive in the
I
marketplace.
appreciate that. My mother worked 3 jobs when we were coming up. And if something didn't pay more, she would either go get another job or she would work hard to achieve so she could go make more money.
But
it's not as simple as
it's not really about the math.
just telling a CEO what they can do with their business.
But it's not really about the math and the economics. It's about values, right? So not long ago, the guys, and they were all guys who ran big American companies, GM, Ford, Sears, those things. They paid themselves about 20 to 30 times the wage of the average worker. Today, that's 300 to 400 times. Japan doesn't do that. Germany doesn't do that. The UK doesn't do that. America does that because the values shifted from what's best for the company to how do I drive the stock price up and get as much of that as I can. And the notion that so much of it is going to so few people is one of the reasons we got Trump.
What stands out in this is how disconnected the just start a business argument is from the real structure of today's economy. In theory, competition solves everything, but in practice, barriers to entry are much higher than they were even 20 years ago. The US Small Business Administration reports that nearly 20% of new businesses fail within the first year, often due to access to capital, healthcare costs, and supply chain dominance by large corporations. That's where the concern about wage stagnation becomes harder to dismiss. Over the past decade, productivity in the US has increased significantly, yet wage growth for median workers has barely kept pace with inflation. Meanwhile, executive compensation has continued to surge, driven heavily by stock-based pay packages tied to short-term market performance rather than long-term employee welfare. In countries like Germany and Denmark, stronger labor bargaining systems and sector-wide wage agreements help keep pay ratios far narrower, which also correlates with lower income inequality and stronger middle-class stability. That contrast makes the US model look less like pure efficiency and more like an imbalance in bargaining power. It also ignores the reality of labor dependency in essential sectors. Healthcare, logistics, and retail cannot simply be replaced by entrepreneurial alternatives for most workers. When inflation rises faster than wages, people aren't choosing low pay freely. They're adapting within constraints. So the debate isn't really about whether markets exist, but whether the current version of the market distributes risk and reward in a way that still reflects modern living costs and worker productivity.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that because largely we understand that when Trump was running for president, he said that he was going to raise the wages for all these workers all across America. But real wage growth is 80% less than what it was. So that's the real facts. So if you make a campaign promise that you're going to raise wages for workers all across this country and you do not deliver on that, then who does that fall on?
Well, I don't think the president's point was he was going to go tell private enterprise that you have to pay people.
He said he was going to create the economic conditions to do so. Has he done that?
But that doesn't mean that he was going to go invade businesses, boardrooms, and say you have to pay your
employees.
Did
he create
more.
the economic conditions to go and do that?
Well, he's telling
You can spin this all the way you want. The president of the United States is not going to, he didn't make a promise to go and invade boardrooms and tell companies, private companies, how much they should pay their employees.
One thing he did do was say that he was going to make life more affordable. And as we pointed out, most Americans say that they don't think that that's where it's headed. He said he would bring prices down. We all knew that that wasn't going to happen because that's not really how prices work. Inequality continues to go up. He talked about bringing down government spending. I couldn't let the day pass without this headline. The Trump Qatari gifted Air Force One is almost delivered, it sounds like, $400 million of taxpayer dollars to give the president a more luxurious ride in the midst of this conversation that we're having, in which 2 in 3 Americans now say that they worry more about running out of money than dying in this country. Look, I think the question I had for you, because I hear a lot of people talk about 2 or 3 jobs, but is that what we want in America? Right. For a mother to work 2 or 3 jobs in order to keep her family afloat? I take it that is an extraordinary thing that your mother did and that many of our families have done. But is that what we want for the future of this country?
I mean, look, that's a point that's taken. I think mothers like mine and others at this table do what they have to do to go and provide for their families. And my father also, for the record, worked several jobs as well. But my point that I'm making is simply this. I would not complain that my CEO is making all this money. If I had an issue with that, I would go start something. I would go create something. I would go create means for me to go and make more money. That's what I wanted to do. We live in a country where that is available. We live in a country where people
we actually don't live in a country where that's available.
Here's the thing.
We create new businesses are started in this country every single day, and business owners are successful.
Tim is tapping into the idea that the American dream and the idea that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and create a business, create jobs, grow your wealth is available in this country. And I don't think that is the reality that many Americans face when they see gas prices at $4.39, the highest that they've been since 2022. I don't think Americans feel that the opportunities are there for them. And that's frankly something that Donald Trump said he would create, opportunity. Okay.
What really drives this is the difference between theory and lived economic reality. In theory, a flexible free market should reward effort and mobility, but in practice, the US has become heavily shaped by structural inequality. The Federal Reserve has repeatedly noted that the top 10% of households now control over 60% of national wealth, while wage growth for middle and lower income workers has lagged behind productivity for decades. That gap matters because it limits how realistic just start something advice really is. According to Census Bureau data, business formation is rising, but survival rates beyond 5 years remain low, especially for founders without existing capital or networks. Access to credit, healthcare costs, and regional inequality all play a role in that outcome. At the same time, surveys from Pew Research consistently show that a majority of Americans believe the economy is not structured fairly for workers, even if they support entrepreneurship in principle. That tension explains why frustration around wages and corporate profits keeps resurfacing in political debates. It also connects to broader fiscal signals. When executive compensation continues to expand faster than median wages, it reinforces the perception that productivity gains are not being evenly distributed. Economists at institutions like MIT and the Economic Policy Institute have pointed out that this divergence is one of the key drivers of declining middle-class stability. So the disagreement here is less about ambition and more about whether opportunity is still evenly accessible. One side sees an open system waiting to be used, while the other sees rising barriers that make that access increasingly uneven in practice. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.